Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever or whenever you happen to be listening to this. Thank you for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based event and wedding photographer Tavishima Ayede. First off, apologies, I still have the cold, and that's the reason why I sound a little funny. I'm on my meds, and hopefully in a few days I will be back hale and hearty, and we should get back to having the recordings without any nasal twang or any sniffling going on. So yes, it's unprofessional for your host to be sniffling throughout the recordings, but just bear with me because I'd rather just put out episodes every day instead of waiting for optimum conditions to record all the time. Which makes me wonder. I wonder how folks like Larry King did it, to be on air every single week, regardless of however they felt. Anyway, interesting. So let's move on. Yesterday we started on professionalism, business communications, and networking, why they are important, and the big questions: why are you and why are you here? Why are you listening to this podcast? Who are you and why are you here? Why are you listening to this podcast, or why are you taking part in any of those things, like the Wedding Planning Academy hosted by my friend Laura Michael Phillips, who is an integral part of the history of why this podcast started in the first place. So, yeah, the big questions. And before we signed off, I mentioned that there were other questions that I posed to people in class, and that those were how these things are related and why are they important. And then, of course, the grandfather of all the questions: how do we foster them? Because that's pretty much the cocoa of why we were gathered there in the first place. So after looking at this was a class for intending wedding planners, by the way. So after looking at the whole thing about the things that you wedding planners do, project management, negotiating contracts with vendors, and all that stuff. Yeah, so we had to sit down and look at these three nebulous but really important things: professionalism, business communications, and networking. So how are these things related? Well, they're related in loads of ways, but the way that I like to look at it is these are sets of skills that we have as as wedding and event industry professionals. There are skills that we have that are not just internal focused, but also outward focused, because other aspects of the business, that's the wedding business that we're involved in, are really internal focused. Whether we're talking about doing accounts, or let's say you're the cake person and chocolate fondant versus I don't know. I don't know anything about baking. So, basically all the technical stuff, or if it's photographers, you're wondering whether to use a full frame versus micro four thirds or a mirrorless, or what lens to use, what aperture, blah, blah, blah. So we have all those technical questions involved in our business, and all the back-end functions, but all those things are internal focused. But professionalism, business communications, and networking, three things that leave us not just with an internal focus, but with an outward focus as well. And that's because they are concerned with our publics, our stakeholders, and our customers. It's concerned with how we interact with our brides and grooms, their relatives, and other people that we have to relate with. Not just that, but the larger publics, how we deal with government regulation agencies as well. We have to pay our taxes, and for some of you, like the decor people, you guys have to liaise with AMAC a lot all the time. They have all these inspections that they claim that they have to do to make sure that you guys are running business in a sanitary manner. Back when I had a studio, AMAC is supposed to come and look at. Oh, AMAC, by the way, is the Abuja Municipal Area Council. Yeah, so they're sort of like the local government over here, and they're the most immediate body that we have to deal with when it comes to office inspections, sanitation, what else? Advertising and signage, and all those other things. So they are supposed to show up at your office and do these inspections. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. Let's just say they never actually showed up. I would go, I'd pay the fee, and I'd do my bit, but they would never show up and certificates would be issued. But that's a topic for another day. Anyway, where was I? Yes, so, yes, they are concerned with how we relate to the publics, and that includes government regulatory agencies. It also determines how we relate with our stakeholders because some of us have investors. I have not taken any investment since I started on my path as being a wedding photographer, but I know some other photographers who have. It is not something that I would recommend, but that's a topic for another day. I would not recommend that particularly for wedding photographers, but I'll make a note of that and discuss that some other time. And then they also serve as the basis for client relations, and that is the main thing that we're looking at here, because client relations is actually the backbone of a healthy business. So if you're able to appear uber professional and you're really suave when it comes to business communications, and you have that networking game tied down, then your client relations should be really smooth. And what that means is you should be able to get return business and referral business as well. So, so that's it pretty much. I'll just wrap it up here. And, okay, I think this should be the record for the shortest episode that I've done so far. So we've looked at how these things are related, and they're related because they give us not just an internal focus, but an outward focus, because we have to relate with publics, stakeholders, and customers, and they serve as the foundation for our client relations. So professionalism is important, business communications are important, and networking is also important as well. So as we listen to this podcast and we keep on getting other material that we need to promote our businesses, let's remember to pay attention to these things as well. So how are they related to sales? Because after all, this is a sales podcast. You will get to see that in the next set of recordings that we do, because you will see that professionalism, business communications, and networking are integrally tied into the practice of sales. And you can't do sales effectively without being extremely professional, without being a master at communications, and without getting involved in the networking game. So thank you very much, guys, for listening to the podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based event and wedding photographer Tavishima Ayede. I will catch you guys at the next recording.